Time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. Update video. It's been a while. Kind of an interesting week or so. In a way, I guess it's some good news in that the liars are lying so aggressively and so excessively that they're making my argument for me. I mean, I don't even have to explain how, Stephen Bro or this Godfrey character or the Farleys or the rest of them aren't worthy of your ear time, merely because they do lie so much, and they just don't care. They don't care. They just take whatever they can take. Any ground they can steal, they'll steal. And it's so obvious in the Brozo case where he has a video up where he says he's debunking something, and his debunk is not, it's exactly the opposite. He claims he's a good enough, he doesn't need a lab coat, he doesn't need to be a scientist to do experiments, and yet he just proves that, yeah, I guess you do, because you're showing you don't have any integrity, you don't care about the truth, and you'll propagandize for facts that aren't real. And that's what he does. The results have nothing to do with what he's claiming the outcome was. And then there's these followers, the Dispar Vulgaro types, who keep, asserting that there's just this preponderance of evidence, and it's in every single case, it's in some sort of form that just isn't very good. And there's clearly no decisive preponderance of the evidence, in the sense that the evidence is quite conflicted, just as Professor Lewin's original video has two experiments in it, and the two experiments are in conflict. They're effectively supposed to be the same thing, and the outcomes aren't the same. And the same can be said for the available examples of certain experimental outcomes or theories. The demonstrations, and you can't just make some state, well, they seem honest. Well, I guess you could argue that clearly, because you do nothing to fact check Stephen Bro, he could appear honest to someone who doesn't point out, well, didn't those results turn out exactly the opposite of what you intended them to, or they're nowhere even close to what you claim them to be. Your debunk is not a debunk, as the experiment shows decisively something different than what you claim it to be showing. Do you call him on any of that? No. So the fact that the cheaters aren't being caught by anybody isn't my bad. It's obviously your bad. I mean, if you're using bad arguments and bad evidence to defend your arguments, then you're just as bad as the overt liar. The passive liars aren't any better. Yes, I did a couple of videos just pointing out obvious defects, well, not necessarily obvious, but potential defects in the videos he thinks are good evidence. And maybe at the end of this video I'll play the high school video again that shows, it's the best video in terms of what you can see. And clearly it's also good because she's obviously not intending to produce results for a math test or something. And so the experiment has a higher air of honesty about it. But whatever. Yeah, whatever. You can't argue with liars and crooks and thieves and idiots. Those are all things you can't argue with. Anyway, so then I did another... I pointed out, too, again, I've done many lever videos, but I did another lever videos because of levers and desperate liars, because they won't concede to the simple argument. So I'll read a couple of comments on my website message board, where they just keep pushing this idea that it's supposed to be somehow intuitive to understand that it takes 4 times more energy to push something twice as fast, or 4 times more energy to do anything that only goes twice as fast. And I keep pointing out that a lever demonstrates that no, it doesn't, and it demonstrates it all the time. And so, even take some simple example like a stick. and I hold the stick and I'm going to swing the stick like a baseball bat. Well, I can put weights on it. I can put a 2-pound weight, halfway down the stick, or I can put a 1-pound weight all the way at the end of the stick. The fact is that's going to feel exactly the same. I'm not going to be able to tell the difference. If somebody hands me the stick and I can't see what weight's on it, I'm not going to be able to tell the difference. It's going to take the same work to swing it. It's going to feel as if it weighs exactly the same, because the motion and the velocity is inverted in a sense, the weight versus the velocity, and it's going to be exactly the same momentum, and I won't be able to tell the difference. Now, how do you explain that? How do you explain that twice as much kinetic energy feels exactly the same as half as much? I mean, your theory is stupid. Again, this whole idea that there's no conservation of momentum, that's what you're saying. that isn't the meaningful principle. And it's a meaningful principle, just like the conservation of energy. You really can't conserve energy if you can make free momentum, or you can destroy momentum. And it's just, you really have to choose one. And you have to understand your choice is narrowed by things like a lever. They sort of prove that you have to respect momentum because it actually does work. It will be, in fact, what you feel, and there is, in fact, no such thing as 4 times more fuel to go twice as fast. It's only twice as much. Alright, anyway. Then, free energy you can't use and free speech you can't have. So we're getting into a bunch of arguments that just really shouldn't have any part of this. So they made some tangential accusations about who I am and what I've done with my life, or what I've preached, or what I've advocated for. And again, they completely lie, just to take everything I've ever said, distort it, pervert it into some illusion of exactly the opposite opinion of my overt and direct statements. So it's like you go out and you actually say overtly, I'm against it, and they take your logic and convert it and pervert, just to take it out of context, to make it appear like you said exactly the opposite. And they do it in aggressive ways, where they will actually take statements about different subjects and put them together to make it sound like you're talking about the same thing when you're not. So I had to post a couple of videos responding to that garbage. I mean, I haven't wasted any time responding to he's now put up the Brozo 4 versions of the same crappy shit song, as if this is somehow part of what people have to endure to have a physics conversation. I mean, it's just too ridiculous. Alright, then I did an overview video on physics, all the subjects, tying gravity to the other photons and such, and that was a good video, I think, in terms of no one's going to debunk anything in it. A comment video, don't remember exactly what the subject was, but I'm sure it was mostly kinetic energy. So, let's see, this one says, versus Brozo the British idiot. I don't know. So this is just more crap about, they're trashing the conversation points regarding how there really is no explanation of how you can have experiments where you create free momentum, and you don't have to explain how that isn't free energy, and that how it can be exploited. So I have repeatedly explained the logical consequence of their theory being true would be a perpetual motion machine, and they haven't explained how the design I've provided won't work, and they continue to not deal with those arguments. Let's see. So Brozo proves Lewin wrong. That's on the subject of the Lewin experiment, where you bang the one mass into the two mass. So Brozo has sort of found that he can't make the 2/3 velocity thing happen without if there's no springs. So in a sense, at least the argument's been narrowed to somehow springs are magical, that somehow they can create free momentum. That, if you have springs in the experiment, then you can make this extra momentum. Alright, and then Brozo proves Young wrong was my response to the photon experiments. So apparently Brozo has done, as I've repeatedly claimed, he does a bunch of experiments and he only shows us the ones that he thinks, are to his advantage, clearly. So lots of experiments, and we don't get to see the results unless the results come out the way he wants them to. So clearly not very scientific, clearly not showing much integrity. So a video he might have done 2 months ago he finally publishes, which demonstrates that 90% of what I've been saying about photons is absolutely correct, that the Young double wave theory is factually doomed in terms of explaining the complexity of the pattern you actually get, that physics is cheating that argument aggressively and egregiously by pretending it's not about point sources and instead trying to pretend it's about some wave traveling through space, and that this really isn't about intersecting rays of light or intersecting waves of light. It's about what lands at a surface and what the surface can interpret. And so it basically proves my point that you can deconstruct the pattern and figure out that there's no room for any interference causing the outcome, that the outcome is really a byproduct of just combining the bits you're getting from different point sources, and that you're really just remaking photons. You never really break them, you never destroy the energy of them, you just either put them back in a form that can be seen, received like a radio, or they're not in a condition that can be received. So if two radio stations are out of phase sending you a signal to your car, for example, you don't receive. It's as if there's no signal hitting your car. The fact is both signals do get to your car, both signals hit your car, but you don't receive it because they're out of phase. And all this is about is photons in phase, photons out of phase, and if they're out of phase, they're not going to be visible. There's no receiver. They can't be received as photons when the elements of the photon are out of phase. And that's the simple explanation for the double slit pattern, and a simple explanation that basically completely erodes the foundations of quantum mechanics. All the wooey Heisenberg crap that photons don't know where or who they are or what they are, and the notion that photons aren't made out of something that has real momentum, that photons have no mass, all that stuff is made fairly ridiculous by a recognition of the simple facts. Alright, and this last overview video of the kinetic energy arguments was pretty good. There was 3 or 4 bits to it. Let's see, I started with pointing out, okay, so this is an illustration in this little image you can see, maybe. An illustration of just how far off Brozo's experiment was. So when he did a simple experiment just measuring whether it's momentum or kinetic energy that compresses springs, his answer was useless. It was so just completely made out of error, because it didn't prove any theory. It wasn't anywhere close. It wasn't even closer to one theory than another. It was decisively indecisive, and yet he called it a debunk video, and he's selling it as if it's confirmation of anything he's arguing for, and as if it's confirmation of some sort of evidence against what I've been arguing, when clearly it's neither of those things. So he's just a pathetic liar. Then I went on to describe the simple perpetual motion machine, how easy it is to build. I think, no, this is pointing out how the Well, it's the 10-ton train versus the 5-ton train, and the different experiments that have been done that illustrate that it's just kind of silly. That when you convert a 5-ton going 10 miles an hour into a 10-ton going 5 miles an hour, you don't lose half the energy. And if you do the opposite, you don't gain 50% free energy. The energy is the same for both objects. It's just in a different form, mass versus velocity, and they'll do the same work in the world. They'll move the same number of atoms in the world. And so you could take this all the way to the extreme of the gun recoil versus the energy of the bullet. And the fact is, the bullet doesn't have more energy. It just has fewer atoms moving a lot more velocity. So yes, one atom going 1,000 miles an hour is the same as 1,000 atoms going 1 mile an hour. But you can think of that in any other kind of metaphor, and it's just true. I can make 1,000 small Godzillas, or I can make one big Godzilla. Okay, and the fact is they're going to eat you just as fast. Whether you like that fact or not, it's just a fact. The 1,000 little things can, if I take the weight of an elephant and I make the elephant out of army ants, what would you rather face, the elephant or the army ants? All right, so that's pretty much it. And the last part was, again, just explaining how simple it is to make a free energy device out of their theory. And there has been and there will be apparently no ability for them to deal with any of the arguments made to illustrate how there's some flaw in the theory, how the device won't work. So they have nothing. And they continue to have nothing. They continue to respond to nothing said in any of these videos. So that video has fundamentally 3 precisely placed arguments, and none of them will be dealt with. Alright, so we'll move on to some stupid comments and such. Alright, continuing. So, this is the Ian guy. I don't know whether I should read Ian first, this crap first. Maybe I'll read this part first. Firstly, who are you talking to? I mean, again, this is pretty clear. I am attempting to talk to anyone capable of making a reasoned and logical argument why anything about the kinetic energy theory, for example, has any integrity. Now, I'll argue the Eddington experiment and the notion that photons don't have mass but yet are bent twice as much by gravity. I'll argue lots of these theories, but I can't argue non-existent arguments. And all you do have as arguments are mush and criticisms of my capacity to do something. And those are all just lies. So you just prove yourself to be completely indifferent to facts. You'll even claim you don't even have any facts to defend your own beliefs, and it's really just your faith. So I'm just arguing with a religious kook, which I'm not interested in doing. So if you're a religious kook and a fanatic, and you think you can jihad against the evildoers, fuck you, okay? I don't think jihad is a rational counter argument. I'll attempt to assassinate your character. Well, fuck you, okay? If that's all you got as an argument, fuck off. Make a physics argument or shut the fuck up. Alright, they you are addressing can't watch these videos as they no doubt are banned from your website. So there's 5 IP addresses I have banned so far. And yes, some of them are because they post 63,000 messages and they're all crap. Alright, so again, it's a reasonable argument to make that there's certain rules in life. You knock on somebody else's door, you have to sort of obey the rules of their house and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? You go to dinner at somebody else's house. Yeah, they don't have the salt and pepper in the same places. They don't have a lot of things. You don't get to just put your feet up on the table and do whatever the fuck you want. And you can't extend that simple courtesy. And that's the fact. All right? I don't do it on the internet. I don't go places and just talk shit. I make arguments. Now, you can't obey that rule, then you can't play. Okay? We're not going to communicate because I don't want to waste my time listening to your songs or some other bullshit. Okay? You wrote a great song about how Asperger's are assholes. Is that what I should waste my time doing? I should waste my time writing songs about what a fucktard you are? All right, anyway. So you're effectively talking to yourself. Well, whatever. Clearly there's some opportunity for somebody who has integrity to show up and actually make a physics argument. Now, you all had the capacity to do that, but you refused. So, yeah, fuck you. All right. And then complaining you get no argument. Well, again, you didn't make arguments, okay? You really don't. You have no evidence. An argument from no evidence is useless. And the argument from I will never address a single point you made is also useless. So, I mean, I say something like, well, Leibniz was a religious kook trying to force physics to match his religious beliefs. Is that a good or bad thing? Is that good physics? Is that good science? When you force the science to match your religion, can you honestly just answer the question and just say, yeah, okay, I get it. That's not a great start. And what's in the middle? Oh, experiments they proved to be wrong 100 years later. So they did some experiments that said, we proved mv squared. And then 100 years later, they cut that number in half. A huge, gigantic change, proving that those experiments were fake. You don't get that that's, hey, you can't admit, hey, yeah, I admit that's not very good science either. Is there some place where you'll actually admit the actual facts? No. So fuck you. Why should I have a conversation with somebody who won't concede any of the facts of the argument? None of them. Secondly, you use your language style, you can kind of imagine. Yeah, everybody uses phrases, okay? You don't make any videos, so I can't critique your, how you semantics, your verbiage that you use in describing something. So what? We know this isn't important. So again, instead of making a physics argument, you're wasting time with this mush. If you are pushing a cart and you double the velocity, you are having to use an increasing amount of energy. Yeah, exactly. Twice as much energy, frankly. We're pushing to idealize the experiment. Let's just say you're pushing with your hand and using your arm. You're using your arm to do the pushing. Okay? If we're going to argue that you're running, well, there's probably could be a slight amount of difference because you have less adhesion to the ground. As you go faster, it's harder to push because you have less friction with the ground. You can make lots of other little subtle arguments about some subtle change. But the overall fact is, in 300 years, you don't have one piece of experimental evidence demonstrating it takes 4 times more energy to go twice as fast. You don't have one single piece of evidence. You can't show it in a NASA rocket. You can't show it anywhere on Earth that it's an actual truth. Okay, that to go 4 times higher with a NASA rocket, I need 4 times more energy. You don't have any facts to defend that argument. Because it isn't true, and that's why you don't have any facts. And instead of accepting that simple truth, that the reason why you don't have any facts or any experiments is because it doesn't happen in the real world. The facts are, it doesn't take 4 times more energy to go twice as fast. To move a piece of matter twice the velocity does not take 4 times the energy. All right, to use an increasing amount of energy the faster you go because you are having to move faster and use more energy. So again, there is no, if you want to make an argument that a spring can expand, well, if the spring has to move forward while it's expanding, yes, that will take more energy. But that's not really the argument, and it certainly won't take 4 times the energy. So it's just a lie to say somehow, because there's a subtle tiny increase in energy, if you're going to dispose of the energy in a certain way to push something, you're going to push it inefficiently. But again, if we push it with just one motion, okay, we're just talking about a baseball swing, It doesn't take more energy to move the half mass twice as fast. I just slide the weight down the bat. Okay, I take a double mass halfway down the bat, or a half mass all the way at the end of the bat, and the fact is those two swings will be exactly the same, indicating that if I doubled that mass at the end of the bat, I would have to double my energy of my swing. Not 4 times, just twice. So again, that's what I mean by you can kind of imagine. That you can kind of imagine, yeah, it's a lever. It doesn't make energy, it just converts it. All right. You're having to move faster and use more energy to keep up with the faster cart. So again, you're the one playing a word game there, by taking the pushing idea and extending it to an object like, say, a car where you can't get a grip on it, or you're just changing enough of the circumstance to say, oh, I can make an excuse for why it won't be perfectly half. It won't be anywhere near 4 times. That's the point that matters. Okay. And to keep applying the same force, you cannot see this. So he says with a question mark, you cannot see that a lever can't create energy. You can't understand that if levers were creating free energy, we would have had a free energy machine 5,000 years ago. So you can't understand this? That escapes your understanding, that if free energy was this easy to access, I just drop 100 joules on one side of a lever, I get 400 joules or 800 joules or 1600 joules on the other side of a lever. If it was that goddamn simple, we wouldn't be paying $4 for oil. I've made this point already. Have you responded to it in any way? No. So I'm responding to your crap. You're never responding to anything I say. Okay, you never accept a single one of my arguments. You never counter-argue any of them. You're never put on the spot, ever. Okay, you never play fair. You're just a horrible cheater, quite obviously. You won't deal with a single argument I make, ever. All right. So, hello, Gary. Hope you're well. Having heard of Eric Lanier. Now, somebody else brought this guy up, and I don't really get your fascination with this loop-de-doo. He's another free energy nut. I mean, he's cold fusion kook. Thinks he has the, he's gonna make the, sun in a bottle kind of bullshit. It's not exactly free energy, but obviously it's it's probably not the best plan, is to say I'm going to duplicate what's happening inside the center of the sun. Not likely you're going to be able to do that. Have you watched any of his episodes on the Big Bang? I mean, you don't know by now I couldn't give a motherfucking cunt about this goddamn Big Bang crap. I mean, it's the most uninteresting, silly, made-up crap theory there is in physics. I mean, of course they're just making it up. I mean, the universe blew up and expanded this much. Then, in a magical 1/1,000,000th of a second, it got this big. It moved 9 million times. Everything moved 9 million times the speed of light, and it got this big, and then it started expanding slowly again. I mean, it's a silly theory. Nobody should be, saying, "Oh yeah, that makes a hell of a lot of sense." They only have one piece of evidence. I mean, cosmic redshift, and as I've already explained, that's pretty easy to say. Well, maybe cosmic redshift is just based on the fact the light's traveling a long distance, and in that long distance it does actually hit some shit on its way. So space is a vacuum, but it's not a perfect vacuum. And so the photons are getting scattered just a little bit in their billions and billions of years of travel, and that little bit of scatter degrades their frequency. A perfectly rational explanation. So, but who cares? Big Bang. I mean, why is this crap important to you fuckers? I cannot for the life of me understand why anyone gives a fuck. We know the creation event wasn't God. So who cares what kind of dumb mechanical system made the universe? Who cares? I just can't understand. The small universe is the real universe, okay? Again, I've said this so many times, but you can't understand that? You want to know the secrets to the universe? Know the secret of the atoms inside of something. Because those rules will tell you the rules out there. You want to know how the universe works, you have to know what the little shit's doing. Because the little shit is making the universe. There are episodes. I mean, I don't. Are there real? Are you really think they're episodes? They're videos, and there's other crap. But whatever. There are episodes of his called "The Emperor is Wearing No Clothes: The Crisis in Cosmology." And again, why do you think I care about any of those subjects? Do you think there's anything in cosmology that has anything to do with reality? I mean, frankly, you're going to get to the truth by looking at the biggest stuff in the universe. No, you're going to get to the truth looking at the smallest stuff. Anyway, he may be someone who would be interested in your views too. No, he seems like all the fanatics. He seems quite fanatical in his fanaticism. And yeah, frankly, his theories are all, it's like there's not a single dissident arguing against kinetic energy, even though it's this wide open target. And they're not even going after the Eddington thing, the whole light is bent twice as much as everything else in the universe. I mean, these are ideas that are really, really stupid on their face. And they have no evidence for them. I mean, the evidence absolutely sucks. And strangely, the dissidents aren't attacking kinetic energy or wootons. And those are the two most open targets. And why? Because they're even crazier on these subjects. They have some even sillier theory than the conventional bullshit. They want to double down on the woo. Okay, they don't want to make describe a rational universe. They want an irrational universe. All right, anyway, no offense taken. Kind regards, Caleb. I'm just surprised, again, that this comes up. I'm just surprised, sorry. I don't hear him saying anything similar to anything I'm saying, realistically. All right, to be clear, as you have a tendency for misunderstanding, so you think these are winning ways to communicate with other people, like somehow I'm going to give you the privilege of answering your points, you answer none of mine, and you're going to talk this shit to me. You think that's how the internet should work. I should knock on your door and wipe my feet after I get in your house. And then you'll say, shit, I'll invite him back again. No, I don't think that's what you're going to say. You are pushing the cart down the road and you want to go faster. So he's doing the same example as if there's anything about this example that could ever make sense to anybody who's ever pushed a cart or pushed a lawnmower or pushed anything. You will use an increasing amount of energy as you are expending some energy just keeping up with the cart. So again, you're using an example where you have to fight a ton of friction. So if you were pushing the cart without friction, okay, that is like a swimming pool or some other way, the fact is this won't happen. The thing will start going just as fast as you, and you won't even be able to push it anymore because there's a point where you'll give it a little more energy than you have, and you might not even be in contact with it anymore. So if you did this kind of thing in space, and those are the idealizations, if you just understand that the only reason why you have to keep applying more energy is because the longer you extend the pushing period, the more friction there is on the way. So what you're describing is better illustrated as pushing something up a ramp or some other example where you have an overt understanding that you're fighting gravity or fighting some force, because the friction is effectively stealing your energy constantly. But I'm just saying the more frictionless I make the experiment, the less and less what you're saying is intuitive will be intuitive. Because it'll be quite obvious that if there's no friction making the cart go any slower, once I get it up to speed, I can't give it any more speed than I have. So I can't even push on it anymore. All I can do is run behind it. Once I give it 30 miles an hour and I can only run 30 miles an hour, I can't push it anymore. I can't do anything. I can just run behind it. And yes, running behind it takes work if I'm going to start banging on the ground and making friction. Anyway, just keeping up with the cart to be able to exert the same pushing force. So again, you just keep arguing as if this has anything to do with the 4 times the energy you're saying it takes. You're nowhere close to your obligation to show there's anything like that, just as you've not shown a single experiment where half the energy in the experiment was lost to deformation or heat. You can't show 1 calorie, let alone 100 calories or 1,000 calories. All right. Surely you intuitively understand this. No, I don't, because I'm not an idiot like you. And clearly only a fanatic would sit there and say you have no physical evidence, you can't link to a single fucking experiment on the entire internet validating your point, and yet you'll just persistently talk this shit. And then you'll complain where I'll say, what's the point of talking to this asshole? He pays no attention to any of my arguments. He just keeps making the same silly, stupid ones over and over again and says I should be as stupid as he is. No, I'm not as stupid as you, fuckhead. Alright, anyway. This is the guy advising Brozo. Okay, Brozo takes this moron's advice. And again, where are you, Ian? I mean, I've completely decimated Brozo's debunk video, where he bangs the tooth carts into the spring. I mean, he's basically proven he's basically proven he can't do experiments without gigantic margins of error. All right. And so where have you pointed that out to him, that his debunk isn't a debunk? Where have you had the integrity to point out, hey, Steve, you shouldn't call a video a debunk when the only thing you debunked was your own competence? That's really being a liar. Why don't you point out to Steve that he's now an overt liar, right? Because it's been pointed out numerous times the video doesn't do what he says it proves, and he just leaves it the way it is. So why is that okay with you? Will you answer that question? Why is it okay with you that Brozo has a bunch of videos saying proof and debunk, and the fact is the videos don't do that? Okay. But there'll be no response again. All right. So anyway, I'll play the old the high school air track video one more time, just to point out that of all the experiments, it's the one that's just right there. I mean, it's not on purpose, not to prove anything, and seems pretty obvious. Alright, so here's the example of the 1 mass cart with a spring banging into the 2 mass cart with a spring, and the theory predicts that there's going to be 2/3 the velocity continuing in this direction and 1/3 in the opposite. And I would argue the results kind of are decisive that that doesn't happen. And I would argue that it's clear that the 1 cart, the 1 mass cart, is clearly 1/2 the size of the red cart. This is not a 3 mass cart. In the the publication for the air track, this particular one, the red cart is actually 3 lengths long. Okay, so a 3 mass cart, 3 times the mass cart, would be 3 times longer. So even though it's the wrong color, they obviously changed the colors. It's just a 2 mass cart, and you can tell by its length. Okay, it's twice as long. And the thing she's doing different is she's not using a standard size cart going through the light gate. So because she's not doing that, the red cart is twice as long. So you just have to cut that time in half, obviously. So it's twice as big. So it goes through the timer. It takes twice as long to get through the timer. So you just cut the time in half. And it's kind of clear what you get as results here.
Then the gold cart will rebound through its original photo gate while the red cart moves on to the right. Let's watch.
And so it's a really good air track in the sense the red cart isn't moving at all. So neither cart's moving, so we know we have a really nice level track. So you get this, you can just do it from these 2 times right here. So the cart going in is 3536. The cart going out is 14, 2. So you say 142. So it's 35 versus 142. You obviously just cut the 142 in half, and you get 7-1. and that's exactly half. It's exactly twice as much time, which would be half the speed. All right, so it's clearly works out perfectly to be in half, a little less than half the speed, which fits quite well. And the other cart went back something substantially less than 1/3 the velocity, but whatever. So momentum is conserved, and there is no 2/3 velocity continuing forward. So this, it's just one experiment, yes, but I'm just saying it just overtly and quite obviously counters the other experiments where they were trying to get the results. This one's not trying. And again, when Professor Lewin wasn't trying, okay, somehow the experiments turn out differently, okay, when they're not trying to force it. And that's a fact. But anyway, I'm just throwing it. So Dispar is saying that every single experiment proves it works. This one clearly proves it doesn't work. All right, it doesn't happen. And such. So, enough said. And so till the next time and such, I think. So just waiting for something to change, some kind of new information. So it was good that Brozo, for whatever dumbass reason, I don't know why he decided to be to post old videos that clearly demonstrate that what I've been saying over the last months is absolutely true, and he decided to post videos demonstrating that to be a fact. But maybe he'll continue in that trend. I mean, the last 3 videos have basically proven him to be a lousy experimentalist, and the other 2 videos proved he's been talking a lot of shit that isn't true. So that's progress. Whether we'll get something decisive enough for there to be some reason to, maybe talk to Toady again or have a conversation, we'll see. I mean, something has to change for the argument to change. There has to be some more evidence to discuss. And it's so far not so good in that category. Alright, anyway, till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. This has been a DraftPhysics.com video presentation and such.